This was a setup.
Yep.
This whole thing was a setup. The Obama team subjected the Trump team through Hillary and their Democrat consigliaries to a sting operation. Random people kept approaching the Trump team. They weren't random, but it seemed random, and the press is still treating it that way. Kept approaching the Trump team with either claims of having information about Russians and Russian emails on Hillary, or Hillary's emails that the Russians had, or people showed up at situations where conversations that were had about Russians seemed to make it back to Fusion GPS. If you've been listening to the show from episode number 628 on, this is clear as day. I point to a number of people who have been approaching the Trump team. The Agalarovs, Sergei Millian, who else? Alexander Downer. These people are all connected to either Democrats or the Clinton team and have interactions with the Trump team. I am absolutely convinced this was a sting. One of those people is Sergei Millian. Now, I'm not suggesting at all that these people, Joe, just to be clear, even knew they were part of a sting operation. I'm not.
No.
But you don't have to be.
You don't have to.
You don't have to know.
No.
If I pay a guy to go to Joe's house, I give him $30 a day and say, listen, I want you to knock on this guy's door and see if he'd be interested in doing an armed robbery with you. And it's me looking to set Joe up. The guy I grab off the street who does it, he may have no idea what he's part of. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not claiming they were witting accomplices. I'm simply claiming to you that I absolutely believe they were part of something bigger. The piece Ross put on Millian out there has only solidified that view. It's fascinating because he says in the piece that's now, Joe, unbelievably, I mean, hold on, let me move this mic cord here, that the FBI is looking at, let me just give you the quick background on Millian because I'm assuming you all listen. You may not have heard that part. Sergei Millian is a international businessman who is in many ways connected with Papadopoulos, had meetings with him, spoke with him, knew Papadopoulos. Millian is also alleged to have been the source, maybe not directly, but the source of the golden shower information that made it into the dossier. In other words, the grotesque, by the way, nonsensical stories about Trump and his activities, let's say. It's a family-friendly show overseas. You know the story. Yeah. Millian's alleged to have been the source of that. Whether he told someone who made it to the dossier or if he told them direct. There are many allegations out there that Millian was the source. Now, again, weird, folks. Millian's dealing with Papadopoulos on the Trump team, just like Alexander Downer was, who is also connected to the Clintons, the Australian foreign minister. And all of a sudden, this information keeps making it back to the FBI. Look, I dealt with Papadopoulos. Hey, FBI. Hey, Fusion GPS. Hey, Christopher Steele. Folks, it's not coincidental. It can't be. It could be. Actually, I shouldn't say that. It could be coincidental. Let me be precise. It's highly, highly unlikely. Now, what's the development? Yeah. Well, the Daily Signal piece, Joe, the FBI can't seem to find Sergei Millian. What? They want to talk to him. Yeah, read the piece. They're apparently having a very tough time locating a guy who was more than happy to be in the media before this. Fascinating how Millian seems to have disappeared off the radar now. But more importantly, folks, this is where it gets this is now we're going to get into crazy town now.
All right.
Not on my behalf. Well, crazy, if what I wasn't telling you is true, you'd think this was a Looney Tunes spy novel that no one would pick up, like a Vince Flynn novel, and you're like, nah, it's so ridiculous. So apparently a photo had surfaced from Millian's own social media accounts of him having a nice little chat with Deripaska, Oleg Deripaska. Well, remember what I always tell you, remember the names.
Yeah.
Well, who is Deripaska? Deripaska is a Russian oligarch who is intimately close with Vladimir Putin. They are old buddies. Deripaska is also the guy whose lobbyist, follow folks, this is going to be important. And what am I trying to establish here? Just to be clear, I'm trying to set up the premise here that this was a sting and that Millian may have been part of it, knowingly or unknowingly.
All right.
A photo of Millian has surfaced with Deripaska. Deripaska's lobbyist in D.C. has a lobbyist, a guy named Waldman. His lobbyist in D.C. is the one who reached out to Democrat Senator Mark Warner who was investigating this matter on the Senate on the Senate side. He's a Democrat. He is the one who reached out to Warner to set up a meeting between Warner and Christopher Steele.
Next stop, Crazy Town.
Next coming up. Ding, 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 ding. 5 minutes,
cow.
Crazy Town. 5 minutes, Crazy Town. Have your tickets ready, folks. Crazy Town next. Folks, follow the... Just,
Unbelievable.
Is this not why I tell you to memorize the names? Because I read this piece by Chuck Ross. And of course, Deripaska, if you listen to the show and you remember the names, should jump right out to you. So Millian is now in photos with Deripaska. Deripaska's connected to Putin. Deripaska's lobbyist tried to set up a meeting between a Democrat senator and Steele, the spy who wrote the dossier, who supposedly got the information about the golden shower from the dossier from Millian. Folks, how many coincidences in this case are going to smack you in the face before you're like, wait, what?
This stinks to high heaven.
Thank you, Dr. Phil. It sure does. You're damn right it does. Ooh, is that pungent? I'm telling you, this guy was set up. The Trump team. So was Papadopoulos. Downer meets with Papadopoulos in a London bar. Oh, Downer was instrumental in the Clinton Foundation getting, millions in taxpayer dollars from the Australian government. Downer involved in the sale of Australian uranium to the Russians. Downer magically communicates to American intel after his meeting with the Trump team. They know something about the Russians. Folks, this was a setup. The Agalarovs. They contact the publicist who contacts Trump. Hey, we know someone who's got information on the Russians. Let's set up a meeting. Who's the Russian lawyer who shows up at the meeting? Oh, a lady working for Prevezon. Who else is working for Prevezon? Oh, Fusion GPS, the same company that bought the dossier. Folks, this was a sting the whole time. It was a setup. Guys, listen, I was a federal investigator. You don't have to be one here. This is obvious.
Yeah.
This was a setup. Millian all of a sudden is as some kind of relationship with Deripaska. Deripaska's lobbyist apparently is friendly enough with Steele to try to set up a meeting with a Democrat senator. As Millian is alleged to have given the golden shower information to Steele as he was dealing with George Papadopoulos and the Trump team.
Yeah.
What? All right.
Hey, before you go on, it's good that you give the names and who they are. I think our listeners are remembering the names. There's a lot of players here.
I hope so, because I told you when I was a young Secret Service guy, the best advice I ever got from my boss. Dan, don't remember them. Memorize the names, because you'll see them again every time. And if you don't, boom, right away know them, you're going to get lost. The minute I read this Chuck Russ piece and saw Deripaska, I sent it over to Matt and went, do you believe this? Like, everything we've been saying forever is materializing in front of our very eyes. It was a sting. Hey, go get information from the Trump guys. And by the way, report back to us immediately. Crazy. All right. Oh, here's another one. Remember the names. So Breitbart. So that piece in the Daily Signal will be at the show notes today. Check it out. Another piece in Breitbart today. Another remember the names, or memorize the names, I should say, scenario here. So, Jonathan Weiner. Jonathan Weiner, if some of you may be ringing a bell, some of you may have forgotten. I understand there's a lot of names in this. Hillary used to work at the State Department. Obviously, she was Secretary of State. She left. John Kerry took over afterwards. Hillary Clinton maintained a robust, vibrant presence in the State Department through a number of people who had worked for her husband, Bill Clinton, who stayed there under the Kerry regime. It's obvious Hillary Clinton and John Kerry are political allies as well. Hillary Clinton maintained at least a political influence foothold within the State Department. Jonathan Weiner is a State Department official. He was a special envoy to Libya who has already acknowledged in a Washington Post op-ed that he took information from Christopher Steele and passed it to law enforcement officials, even though, folks, he was a bureaucrat in the State Department. He was not a law enforcement or intelligence official. Joe, you tracking?
Yeah.
Hillary's guy, still in the State Department, knows Hillary, works at the time for John Kerry, to be clear, but has deep connections to the Clintons. Mm-hmm. He is not a law enforcement or intelligence official. He magically meets with Christopher Steele. He magically gets information, comes from Sid Blumenthal and Cody Shear, by the way, who are working in Libya, where Benghazi is, by the way, wink and a nod. Like, there's a deep connection there, too, of course. I'm not suggesting anything conspiratorial. I'm just telling you there's a deep connection there. Weiner's a special envoy to Libya. Sid Blumenthal is passing information from Libya to Hillary. Cody Shear works with Hillary. Works with Blumenthal and is gathering information and passing it to Blumenthal to get to Weiner's hands. Weiner's in the State Department. Why not give it directly to the FBI? Because they needed to launder the information. They needed to give the appearance. This is important, Joe. The Clintons and the Obama team in the setup on Trump needed to give the appearance that information about Trump's involvement with the Russians was coming from so many different places that it had to be true.
Gotcha.
Even though, Joe, it was all coming from the same spot.
Yeah.
Christopher Steele and Hillary Clinton. So what did they do? This is why I'm not suggesting to you these people were knowingly involved. They tell Blumenthal and Shear, get the information to Steele to Weiner. Weiner will then do us he'll do us a solid wink, wink, nod, nod, right? Yeah. He'll get it over to the FBI, and then it'll come from the State Department. So it'll look like super official then, man. Yeah. This is what we got to do. By the way, Weiner has acknowledged that he was the courier of information to the intel and federal law enforcement community. He's already acknowledged this in the Washington Post. None of this is up for dispute. What's the new news? Well, if you remember the name Weiner, you know all that. Well, in an article, fascinating piece by Breitbart, where did Weiner work from 2008 to 2013? APCO. You're like, huh? The hell is APCO? APCO is the company alleged by the informant in the Uranium One case, Joe, that is alleged to have lobbied the Clintons to the tune of millions of dollars to make sure these uranium deals went through.
That's where I heard that name. Yep, the uranium business.
Again, another in an amazing series of coincidences. How many times have I told you, folks, the reason the Trump spying scandal, or the Obama team spying on the Trump team, that whole scandal went down is because they needed an insurance policy, as Peter Strzok even indicated, although I think he was saying it for different reasons. They needed an insurance policy in case Trump won to make sure all of this stuff went away. And they used tools who all were knee deep in it, whether it was Victoria Nuland on her fake Benghazi talking points, who worked at the State Department, helped relay this information to the FBI with Weiner, whether it's Weiner himself, who was involved with APCO when APCO is alleged to have lobbied Hillary Clinton to allow the Russians to buy our uranium. They all had something to hide. All of them. Now do you understand when people say things like the swamp rats and the deep state? Oh, you guys are all crazy conspiracy theorists. Are we? You sure about that? You sure there, Daddy-O? Because everything I'm telling you actually happened. Tell me anything I told you that's a lie. What, Weiner didn't work there? Oh, didn't work at APCO? You'll prove yourself a fool quite quickly. Weiner wrote in an op-ed he gave the information over to the State Department. He already told them that. Sorry, I got a screen on, but you see that, Joe? I get screens on everywhere in this house. Let me throw you another wrinkle here that's going to blow your mind. Not only did Weiner work for APCO, the company that's alleged, by the way, and they dispute this, to be fair. APCO does, that is. By a confidential informant, they are the company that's alleged to have lobbied Mrs. Clinton heavily to get these uranium deals passed through. Weiner worked there at that company. Weiner was part of the information superhighway to get information to the FBI through multiple channels. APCO also provided pro bono work, meaning for free.
Yeah.
Who do you think they provided that pro bono work to, Joe? I'll give you the initials, and I'm going to give you a hint. I'm going to see if you can figure this out. The pro bono work was provided to a entity called CGI. The first initial of that stands for a former president. The second rhymes with the word flobel, and the third one rhymes with the word Initiative.
The Clinton Global Initiative, Dan.
Dude, you are a